Stanley Haifong is here.
So, hey, Jimmy. Hey, everyone. My book is called American Exceptionalism and American Innocence, A People's History of Fake News, from the Revolutionary War to the War on Terror.
Well, it's great to see you. And whenever you're on, I always get a lot of controversy when you're on, right? I mean, people go nuts when you're on the show. I mean, nuts.
Yeah, I'm aware.
And so it's funny. I just want people to know I show all sides of the China debate. And then I have you, and you're way over to the left. What is the NPC? Tell me that first.
The NPC is the National People's Congress. It is the highest legislative authority in China, along with the China's People's Political Consultative Conference, which is the body which represents all of the political parties that talk about policy to discuss national and international policy.
So, and you correct me when I get something wrong.
To begin, when it comes to Hong Kong, we have to be really clear that Hong Kong, over the course of 100 plus years, from the mid 1850s to the mid 1840s to 1997, was a British colony. And it wasn't until the 1980s where China was able to negotiate and said, no, we're not going to allow an entire region of our country to be colonized by the British. So Margaret Thatcher at that time actually wanted to take military action to keep Hong Kong as part of the British colonial empire. But the British Defense Ministry said, hell no, we cannot do that. That is political suicide. So Hong Kong becomes once again part of China. It is actually governed as a special administrative region within the framework of the Chinese Constitution. So Article 58 of the Chinese Constitution actually gives the central government the right to enforce laws for all of its special administrative regions, but Hong Kong has a special relationship to Beijing. The basic law is that special relationship, which allows capitalism, especially the hyper finance capitalism, neoliberal capitalism that exists in Hong Kong, to remain in place so long as, and this is part of the basic law, which should not really infuriate the Western media and the U.S. media so much, because this is actually in the basic law, so long as there is not sedition, treason, or a separatist movement to occur in Hong Kong to separate it from China.
So tell people who that is. Tell people who the National Endowment of Democracy is.
Right. So the National Endowment for Democracy is a large organization that was begun in 1983 under the Reagan administration to basically conduct the affairs of the CIA out in the open and in the public that the CIA used to do in private. Their principal mission is to fund NGOs and political organizations abroad to promote U.S. democracy and to protect the interests of the U.S. empire. 2 out of the 4 principal headquarters of the NED are located in Hong Kong. And there are over 35 organizations in Hong Kong funded by the National Endowment for Democracy.
People who watch the Jimmy Dore Show might be familiar with the NED, because the NED is that branch of the government, that nefarious branch of the government that funds places like Bellingcat, which is that pro-war website that smears people who tell the truth about war. So they've smeared us. Anybody who tells the truth about Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, Venezuela, Bellingcat, funded by the United States government, will smear its own citizens in the effort to push war and discredit anti-war voices. That's who the NED is. We all know that the CIA or American intelligence had something to do with the protests in Hong Kong.
What happened in Ukraine? The NED helped back these far-right, very fascistic forces in Ukraine to overthrow the government. And before 1997, there were no minimum wage protections. There were absolutely no basic rights. Things like flogging existed. Public flogging was a punishment.
So how many people live in Hong Kong? Do you know? I'll ask Siri. Hey, Siri, what's the population of Hong Kong?
As of 2019, the population of Hong Kong was 7,500,700.
BBC reports 2 million last June 2019.
Last June 2019.
So in terms of how I would characterize China, is they call it socialism with Chinese characteristics, socialism being the central authority of the state, and then Chinese characteristics being integrating the market in a way that fits the conditions of China and allows the market to operate as a engine of growth, which it has done. They specifically say they're in the primary stage of socialism, which means that they're using the market and they're doing whatever they can to get out of the utter poverty. In 1978, there was less than one telephone per 1,000 in the population, less than one car per 1,000 in the population. Per capita GDP was barely $100. So we're talking about a very poor country as of 1978. And so it's about balancing the goals, and balance is a huge part of what China does both domestically and abroad, trying to ensure the interests of the Chinese people are safeguarded, as well as ensure that it is not doing harm to the people's interests in its dealings abroad as well. But really, I think our principal stance should be around China, that the Chinese people should be managing the affairs of their government and their system, and that people in the United States have the obligation to defend China from U.S. aggression.
The reason I ask you that in that way, if there's that many leftists in China, who picks up the restaurant tabs? Come on. Come on.
I didn't even get that one.
Come on.
Right over my head, Jimmy. Right over my head.
That's because I'm going to guess he's one of those lefties.
Dead street. Constantly dead street.
Always splits the check.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to guess.
Oh, there's 5 of us? Let's split it.
See, I just outed you. Danny's one of those lefties. Doesn't pick up.